I was in the middle of a quiet afternoon when the sudden knock on my door startled me. At first, I thought it might be a delivery or one of the neighborhood kids playing around, but when I opened the door, I froze. Standing there was my neighbor's husband. Alone. He rarely came by, and never without his wife. His eyes carried a strange intensity, like he had been rehearsing what to say but still couldn't find the right words. I couldn't hide my surprise, but before I could even ask, he muttered, "I need to talk to you." For years, I had known them as the couple next door. They seemed stable, at least from the outside. She often came over with small favors, borrowing sugar, sharing recipes, chatting in the evenings. He, on the other hand, was distant, polite but rarely involved. Which is why seeing him at my door, without her, set off an uneasy feeling in me. His clothes looked slightly wrinkled, his face tired, like he hadn't slept properly. There was a heaviness in his presence, the kind that made the air shift the moment he stepped closer. I asked casually if everything was all right, expecting him to say his wife was homesick, or maybe they needed some help with something. But he didn't answer directly. He just looked past me into the hallway and then back at me, as though deciding whether he could trust me. "Can I come in?" His tone was low, almost pleading. My heart thudded. I hesitated, because everything about this situation felt unusual, yet something inside me urged me not to shut the door. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Once inside, he didn't sit right away. He lingered near the door, fidgeting with his hands, glancing around like he was afraid someone might see him. I tried to ease the tension by asking where his wife was, but his jaw tightened at the question. "She's not here," he said firmly, offering nothing more. It wasn't an explanation, just a statement that carried its own weight. The silence that followed was louder than any answer he could have given. I led him toward the living room, each step echoing with the uncertainty of what this visit meant. The clock ticked in the background, filling the space between us. My mind was racing with questions I didn't dare ask out loud. Why me? Why now? Why without her? When he finally sat down, he buried his face in his hands for a moment before looking at me with eyes that carried both desperation and resolve. "There's something I can't tell anyone else," he began, voice rough. "But I need to tell you." The seriousness in his tone made my chest tighten. He wasn't here for something ordinary, that much was clear. Whatever he had brought with him was heavy, and it was about to spill into my quiet afternoon. Against every instinct, I closed the door behind him, sealing us in with the tension that had just begun to unfold. The room felt heavier after I shut the door. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor as though the words he wanted to say were buried deep within it. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost broken. "She left," he said. My heart skipped. At first, I thought he meant permanently, but he quickly added, "After the fight last night, she packed a bag and went to her sister's. She didn't even look back." The calm, steady marriage I thought they had began to look like a mask. He explained in fragments, each piece sharper than the last. He said it wasn't just one argument but years of unspoken resentments piling up until they exploded. She accused him of being distant, cold, unfaithful even. He countered that she never understood him, never saw him for who he really was. His words tumbled out with the urgency of someone desperate to unload a weight he could no longer carry. I sat frozen, unsure why he had chosen me of all people to confide in. He had friends, family, but instead he was here, in my house, telling me secrets that could shatter the perfect image I had of them. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," he admitted, "but I feel like you're the only one who'd understand." His gaze met mine, and for the first time, I felt the intensity behind his visit. It wasn't random. He had come with purpose, even if he wouldn't fully admit it. I wanted to remind him that I was just a neighbor, nothing more. Yet, a small part of me understood his loneliness. I had seen their disagreements before, subtle but noticeable. The way she rolled her eyes when he spoke too long, the way he looked away when she scolded him in public. Maybe I had ignored those signs, convincing myself it wasn't my place to judge. Now, the cracks were no longer hidden. They were wide open, pouring out right in front of me. He shifted closer, his words softening. "You've always been different," he said. "You listen. You don't judge." I can't talk to her like this. She doesn't hear me anymore. The compliment landed heavier than it should have. I felt a warmth creeping in, but it wasn't comfort, it was danger disguised as closeness. My chest tightened as his eyes lingered longer than necessary. Inside, I wrestled with questions. Was he searching for comfort, or was he testing me, pushing boundaries under the excuse of vulnerability? My instinct screamed to keep distance, yet the weight of his honesty pulled me deeper into his storm. For a moment, I saw him not as my neighbor's husband but as a man stripped of pride, reaching out for someone to hold on to. Then his hand brushed the table between us, inching closer to mine, stopping just short of contact. He didn't move it away, and neither did I. His silence carried more meaning than his words, a silence that asked a question without speaking it. I felt the line between right and wrong blur in that heavy moment, and I couldn't deny that I was caught in it. The air between us grew thicker, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. His hand remained near mine, close enough to stir something dangerous inside me. I told myself to pull away, to create distance, but instead I froze, caught in the intensity of his gaze. His voice dropped to a whisper, steady but weighted. You don't know how many times I've wanted to say this, you're not like her. You see me. The words sank into me like forbidden music I had no business hearing. I tried to deflect, reminding him that this wasn't right, that he needed to fix things with his wife. But the more I spoke, the more he leaned in, his expression unshaken. We're past fixing, he murmured, eyes never leaving mine. She doesn't care. She never did. But you, he let the sentence hang, unfinished, but the meaning was already too clear. I felt the pull, undeniable and reckless. For years, I had admired from afar what I thought was a perfect marriage, secretly comparing it to my own quiet, uneventful life. Yet here he was, dismantling that illusion piece by piece, showing me that behind their closed doors, things weren't so perfect after all. And in that imperfection, he was reaching for me. When his fingers finally touched mine, it was as if time stopped. The slightest contact sent a rush through me I hadn't expected, a mix of fear, guilt, and something dangerously close to desire. My breath caught, and though I knew I should recoil, I didn't. His touch lingered, soft but deliberate, a question wrapped in silence. I whispered, almost to myself, this can't happen. But the protest lacked conviction. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. I know, he said, his breath brushing against my skin, but I can't help it. The honesty in his tone made it harder to resist, as if surrendering would be less of a choice and more of an inevitability. I told myself to think of the consequences, of her, of the betrayal, but logic was drowning in the current of the moment. I closed my eyes, conflicted, heart pounding so loud it felt as though he could hear it. His presence consumed me, every word, every glance, every inch of space between us shrinking. My body leaned forward without permission, caught in a dangerous rhythm I hadn't asked for but couldn't deny. The line we were about to cross wasn't just physical, it was everything: trust, loyalty, morality, all teetering on the edge of collapse. And then, just as our lips nearly met, the sound of movement outside snapped the spell. A car door slamming shut, footsteps approaching, a faint voice in the distance. We froze instantly, both of us wide-eyed, our closeness still palpable but interrupted. My chest heaved, trying to process what almost happened, while his jaw clenched with frustration. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with everything left unsaid, everything that nearly became real. The sudden interruption outside left us suspended in a silence we couldn't escape. My pulse was still racing when the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected. I pulled back quickly, creating the distance I should have kept from the beginning, while he sat there, jaw tight, eyes shifting as if calculating his next move. I hesitated, unsure whether to answer, but the ringing stopped on its own, leaving behind only the echo of what we almost did. When I turned back to him, his expression had changed. The vulnerability that filled his face earlier was gone, replaced by something sharper, almost smug. You know, he said slowly, she thinks I already have someone else. His words landed like a strike, and I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard right. He leaned back, shoulders relaxing as though he had been carrying a performance all along. She dares me. Tests me. She wants to see if I'll actually do it. Confusion twisted inside me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't match the gravity of his words. "Last night wasn't just a fight. She accused me, told me I was too close to you. And I wanted to prove her wrong. Or maybe right. I don't even know anymore." The ground beneath me felt unsteady. Everything he had confessed, his loneliness, his marriage falling apart, suddenly felt less like a cry for help and more like a calculated move. "So this," I whispered, pointing between us, "was what? Some kind of game?" His eyes locked on mine, unapologetic. "A test," he said plainly. "To see how far I'd go. To see if temptation is stronger than loyalty." Anger surged through me, pushing out the guilt that had been gripping my chest moments before. He hadn't come seeking comfort or understanding. He had come to pull me into his broken promises, to drag me into their battle, using me as the measure of his weakness. The thought of being a pawn in their twisted marriage stung worse than any confession he could have made. I stood quickly, needing distance, needing air. "You should go," I said firmly, though my voice trembled. He rose slowly, no rush, his smirk lingering as if he had already decided what this encounter meant for him. At the door, he paused and glanced back, his expression unreadable. "Now I know," he said quietly, "and so will she." The words cut through me like a blade. He wasn't just leaving with his secrets, he was leaving with mine too, secrets that hadn't fully happened but were dangerous enough to ruin everything. I watched as he walked away, his figure disappearing down the path, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. My house no longer felt like mine, my choices no longer felt innocent. I stood frozen, haunted by the realization that nothing about that visit had accidental.